You're tuning into The Deep Dive. And I know you're here because you want to get past the headlines, really understand things.
Mhm.
Today, we're jumping into something pretty fundamental for education's future. How we actually prepare teachers, specifically to support all students in their classrooms.
Yeah, and you actually sent us the core material for this
I
dive.
did. It's this really interesting review published in the Educational Psychology Review. It's all about pre-service training for what's called inclusive education.
Right. And, just to make sure we're on the same page, inclusive education, it's basically this approach where every single student, doesn't matter their background, their learning needs, anything, they get to learn and be part of things in regular mainstream schools.
It's about creating that level playing field, like
Yeah,
you
if
said,
everyone left out.
which, I mean, it just seems logical then that the teachers,
Uh,
they're absolutely central to making this actually happen on the ground, right?
Yeah. Oh, completely. If a teacher feels equipped, feels positive about including all kinds of learners, that's going to fundamentally change the classroom dynamic.
Yeah, their attitude, their confidence, it must ripple outward.
It absolutely does. It directly shapes the learning environment they build. And that's why this review you shared is so useful. It really drills down into that pre-service training bit.
The stuff they get before they even step into their own classroom.
Precisely. How that initial phase can shape those core attitudes towards inclusion.
Okay, so this review wasn't small potatoes. It looked at, what, 31 different studies?
That's right, 31 studies, and those covered 36 different international teacher training interventions. So a pretty wide scope.
Wow, okay. And what was the main goal? What were they hoping to, figure out from looking at all that research?
Well, the big question was really about effectiveness. What actually makes these training programs work well? And they decided to focus specifically on two main things.
Which one?
First, the length of the duration, how long did it last? And second, how was the training delivered? The methods, lectures, practical work, online stuff, that sort of thing, the content delivery mode.
Got it. Duration and delivery method. So
Mhm.
after sifting through all those studies, did they come back with a magic formula? Do X for Y weeks using method Z and you're golden.
Well, that would have been nice, wouldn't it? But it's rarely that simple in research.
Yeah, I figured.
The review itself is quite upfront about a key limitation. A lot of the original studies they analyzed, they just didn't have the kind of detailed statistical reporting needed to draw really rock-solid conclusions.
Ah, okay. The classic data challenge. You have lots of studies, but
Yeah.
maybe they don't all measure things the same way or report enough detail.
Exactly. Makes it hard to do a really deep combined analysis, like a meta-analysis.
But okay, even with that limitation, was there any kind of overall signal? Did the needle move at all?
Yes, actually. Despite that statistical reporting hurdle, the general finding, the big picture, was encouragingly positive.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the review suggests that overall, pre-service teacher training does tend to have a positive impact on those critical attitudes towards inclusive education.
Okay, so it seems like the training efforts are, generally speaking, pushing things in the right direction. That's something.
It definitely is. It's a positive baseline.
All right, so let's dig into those two specifics you mentioned. First up, duration. How long the training went on for. Did they find a clear link? Like, longer programs always meant better attitudes.
That's where it gets quite nuanced. You might expect longer equals better, right?
Yeah, seems intuitive. More time, more learning.
But the review found the connection between program length and attitude change wasn't quite so direct or consistent across the board. Some longer programs did show positive effects, sure, but it wasn't this universal pattern. You couldn't just say more time automatically leads to better outcomes.
Okay, that is surprising. Why might that be, if more time isn't the guaranteed answer?
Well, this is where the review brings in some interesting theoretical perspectives. They looked at the findings through the lens of social psychological theories about effective training.
Ah, okay. So looking at why training works, not just if it works.
Exactly. And these theories suggest that maybe it's not just the amount of time, but how that time is actually used. The quality and nature of the learning experience is packed into that duration could be the more critical factor.
Quality over quantity, essentially.
Essentially, yes. You could have a very long program that isn't particularly engaging or well designed.
Right, that makes total sense. You could sit in lectures for ages and not have it stick as well as a shorter, more intense practical experience.
Precisely. Which leads us nicely into the other key factor they looked at, the content delivery mode.
Yeah, how was the information actually taught? Lectures, hands-on stuff, online modules. What did they find there?
Again, similar to the duration findings, it wasn't a completely clear-cut picture. There wasn't one single delivery method that consistently came out on top across all 36 interventions.
Okay. So no magic bullet for delivery either. But, I mean, some approaches must feel more impactful, surely, like actually working with diverse students versus just, hearing about it.
Well, your intuition aligns pretty well with some of the empirical findings they discuss.
Yep.
The results from the actual studies often hinted that experiences giving pre-service teachers direct, hands-on interaction, especially with students who have diverse needs, those seemed promising.
Real-world application.
Exactly, particularly if those experiences happened in supportive and well-structured settings. Those seem to be linked more often with positive shifts in attitude and, importantly, confidence.
So active engagement looks like a really key ingredient, even if the data isn't strong enough yet to say it's always the best way.
That seems to be the direction the evidence points, yes. Active, meaningful engagement.
Okay, so pulling back a bit, the review basically says, yes, pre-service training generally helps shape positive attitudes for inclusion. That's good news. But the specifics, exactly how long it should be, the absolute best way to teach it, those are still kind of open questions, needing more solid research.
That sums it up really well, and the review is actually quite good at highlighting why more research is needed, pointing out some limitations in the existing studies.
Like the statistical reporting issue you mentioned earlier.
Yes, that, and also, for instance, the method they use to sort of tally the results. They use something called vote counting.
Vote counting. What's that?
It's essentially a simpler way to see if more studies found a positive effect versus a negative or no effect. You just count the votes for success.
Okay.
But as others like Bornstein have pointed out, it's a bit limited. It tells you if studies found an effect, but not how strong or meaningful that effect was. It doesn't capture the magnitude.
Gotcha. So 10 studies might show a tiny positive effect, and one shows a huge negative one, but vote counting just says 10 positive, 1 negative.
Something like that, yeah. It misses the nuance of the effect size.
Okay, what other limitations did they mention?
Well, they also talked about gray literature. When they started, they looked for things like unpublished theses or conference papers.
Stuff that hasn't gone through the formal journal publication process.
Exactly. And sometimes that research can hold valuable insights. But they noted that because of time limits and, frankly, the difficulty in tracking down authors and materials for unpublished work,
Yeah, that could be tough.
it wasn't included in the final analysis. So there might be other pieces of the puzzle out there that this review couldn't capture.
That's a really important caveat. There could be conflicting or supporting evidence just sitting in dissertations.
It's possible. They also mention using a tool, an adapted version of the AXIS scale, originally by Downs and colleagues, to critically appraise the quality of the studies they did include.
Okay, so they were looking at how well those 31 studies were actually conducted, assessing their methodology.
Precisely. Checking the rigor. It shows they weren't just accepting findings at face value, but evaluating the quality of the evidence itself.
That adds credibility, definitely.
And one final methodological point they noted was a shift in their own approach. Initially, they planned and pre-registered a full systematic review.
Which is usually seen as the kind of gold standard for synthesizing research, right? Very strict methods.
Yes, typically very rigorous, often involving statistical pooling of data if possible. But they ended up conducting what's called a narrative review instead.
And a narrative review is.
It's still systematic in its search, but the synthesis is more, well, narrative. It describes and discusses the findings rather than statistically combining them. They explain this shift likely happened because the nature of the data they found, especially those reporting limitations, made a full statistical synthesis difficult.
Okay, so the available research landscape basically guided them towards a more descriptive summary rather than a quantitative one.
Correct. And all these details, the limitations, the methods, they really underscore how tricky it is to nail down the absolute best way to design this training.
Yeah, it's complex.
But what's really valuable, I think, is that the review uses all this discussion about duration, delivery modes, theory, and findings to point towards novel avenues for future research.
Ah, so it's not just saying we don't know, it's saying here's what we need to find out next.
Exactly. It's providing a kind of roadmap for researchers. Here are the gaps, here are the interesting questions sparked by what we did find.
Okay, fantastic. So let's try and boil it down. For someone listening, what's the absolute core message, the key takeaway from this whole deep dive into the review?
I'd say the main point is this. The training teachers get before they start their careers generally seems to positively influence their attitudes about including all students. That's the positive signal.
Okay, training helps.
But, and it's a significant but, we still need much better, more rigorous research to figure out the details. What's the optimal length? What are the most impactful ways to actually deliver that training content? We don't have a definitive one-size-fits-all answer yet.
So progress, yes, but the recipe for the perfect training program is still very much under development.
That's a great way to put it. And understanding those nuances, those details of training design, how long, how it's taught, that's absolutely vital if we genuinely want to prepare educators who feel ready, confident, and effective in creating classrooms where every single student can truly belong and succeed.
Yeah, getting that right seems incredibly important. This has been really illuminating, digging into not just the findings, but also the challenges in this kind of research. It shows that even when something seems beneficial overall, figuring out how to maximize that benefit is a whole other task.
Mm-hmm.
And, thinking about that complexity, changing attitudes, preparing people for such diverse classroom realities, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Beyond just the time spent in training or the basic delivery method, what other elements of that whole pre-service experience might be playing a really significant role? Maybe things we haven't even focused on as much.
Like what, for example?
Well, perhaps the specific focus given to different types of disabilities or learning needs, or maybe the quality of mentorship they receive during student teaching placements, or even the philosophical alignment of the entire teacher education program towards inclusion. It feels like there could be a whole host of other factors beyond just duration and delivery that really shape how ready a teacher is to embrace inclusive practices. Something to think about.